the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Moronu, and I created this show to help lawyers find happiness in life with a law degree. Together with my guests, we provide the knowledge, insight, skills, inspiration, and encouragement you need to find your happy. Before I was a big law associate, I was public interest all the way. I don't know if you know this about me, but in a prior life, I worked and interned at some of the most amazing nonprofit organizations in the world, including Human Rights Watch, the Innocence Project, Amnesty International. And while I gained a lot of amazing experience and wonderful friendships, I didn't really get a sense of how to conduct myself in corporate America, especially the world of Wall Street big law firm. Enter Corporette. It was the blog that saved my life, especially during those critical on-campus interview years and throughout the first few years of my career. Whether it's when to wear pantyhose or how to look your best after an all-nighter, Corporette tackles it all. They even get into the nitty-gritty of whether and when it's appropriate to wear white pants to work and which black pumps are actually appropriate black pumps in the 21st century. And on today's show, I'm super excited to have Corporette's founder, Kat Griffin, on to share her journey from big law associate to full-time fashion and lifestyle blogger. Enjoy! Hello, Kat, and welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. I am so thrilled to have you on the show. And for those young lawyers who have been living under a rock for the last 10 years, or perhaps have a better fashion sense than I do, I would love if you could just start with a brief description of who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I'm always happy to talk about this kind of stuff. So I run two blogs. The first is called Corporette, and the second is called Corporette Moms. And my background is I was a Wall Street lawyer for 6 years, and then I worked at a nonprofit for 2 years. And so of those experiences, I decided to start a blog that addresses fashion and lifestyle advice for overachieving chicks, meaning lawyers and bankers and other people who are working in conservative offices and are often faced with that horrible dilemma of looking frumpy in order to look professional. Yeah, so that is the basic idea of the blog. And Corporette Moms is to address work-life balance and all of the other things that started coming up when I and my readers started having kids.
I love kind of your origin story, but before we get to that, can you just tell us the story of how you became a lawyer and why you ended up in big law?
Sure. I'm going to date myself a little bit here. I went to the Medill School of Journalism for my undergraduate degree at Northwestern University. And one of my last school projects was about this crazy new copyright law that was coming out, known as the Digital Millennium Copyright Act in 1999. So it was this really interesting time because Napster was kind of starting to get started, and you sort of had this idea that we were on the precipice of a lot of new information. Like Internet Explorer was still a new thing. Like GeoCities was probably still up and running, and so it was this really interesting law that was going to address how copyright was going to work on the internet. And my father is an intellectual property lawyer. And so it's always sort of been in the realm of possibility of taking the LSAT and going to school and becoming a lawyer and stuff like that. But it was not something I ever thought I was going to do because I loved writing and I loved journalism school. So I took the LSAT while I was in college, but then decided to go out and work for magazines in New York. And I was working for Family Circle magazine, mostly because they would let me write right out of the gate, and I didn't have to do a lot of fact checking and other sort of scuttle work. And I was trying to freelance stories that were more interesting than, how to save on your next family vacation. And I was trying to freelance stories about copyright law because I'm a dork. And, at some point I was just sort of like, if I'm fascinated by this stuff and it seems like there's like this whole new realm of stuff opening up, I could go to law school and I could be like young kid who knows all the cool stuff about copyright law. And then I could be the cool kid at the law firm who knows this stuff and get good work, and it would be really fascinating and so forth. So I decided to go to law school and wound up at Georgetown. And I thought I was going to be super old at, 24. And I was very surprised to read that I was the average law student. I saw some statistics somewhere that 55% of law students are women in their mid-20s, and they have a father who's a lawyer. So I thought, interesting. Okay, I'm going to file that away for later. So I went to Georgetown, took all these copyright and IP classes. I actually got to see the oral arguments in a big copyright case that went down that year in New York Times versus Ticini in the Supreme Court. And they had told us at Medill that no one does First Amendment law all the time. Not even Floyd Abrams, they said, who is this big lawyer who's sort of known as the dean of the First Amendment bar, kind of. And at some point in law school, while I was taking all these copyright classes, I also took some media law classes and First Amendment classes and realized I could go work with Floyd Abrams. And so I went to Cahill, worked with Floyd, got to work on the Judy Miller case, prior restraints. He has a big pro bono project that he does every year for PLI and prior restraints and stuff like that. So I worked with him on that. I actually worked with Floyd on a copyright case also. Yeah, so that was sort of how I wound up in law. And I was very lucky. I'd say maybe 30% of my work was with Floyd or on like interesting media law cases, and other stuff got in the mix as well, like a heavy portion on reinsurance law. So there you go.
That's actually a really fantastic story of getting into the law. I feel like so many people are so much more directionless and end up there kind of without a purpose. And it seems like you got in part what you were looking for, but it wasn't exactly what you thought it would be, perhaps?
Well, I mean, I did not realize going to law school that it was going to be very difficult for me to get into IP law strictly without any sort of science or technical background. Like I was a journalism and political science major at Northwestern. Like if I'd sort of taken some computer coding classes and it could have been a minor, but there's just no way if I wasn't like solid, like one of my friends at law school her background was like geneticist and biology and stuff. And she was going to be the young kid who was, she was going to be the young kid who everyone was coming to for copyright and IP stuff, especially since copyright is sort of seen by many IP lawyers, I think, is sort of like the soft IP. It's the patent where the real stuff is. And in fact, that's what my dad does. He was a patent lawyer.
That's really interesting because I didn't know that either. And I've been practicing for, 6.5 years now myself, and recently was put on the employment committee at my firm. And so part of it was reviewing potential IP associates and how much they would drill into the science background on these kids or young adults. They're not kids. And I completely was unaware, but I guess you'd have to have some level of foresight or like a willingness to go back and educate yourself in order to make it happen.
Right.
So let's fast forward to when you decided to start the blog and how that transition worked for you and why you decided to transition full-time into the blog.
I had been practicing at Cahill for a few years, and my friends and I at Cahill were sort of sharing, like we would just sort of have these long email chains of like, how about this black pump? No, how about this black pump? How about this one? Like when one friend was like looking for a new black pump at Zappos, and we would just have these email chains with like Zappos links. And I just thought it was something that was like wacky about Cahill or New York law or something. It didn't occur to me that it was a big thing. And we were working on, it was that copyright case. We were based in Philadelphia and we had sort of come for the appeal. And so we were working with local counsel that had lost the case in the district court. And I wound up having some late night discussion with one of the lawyers who was local about the best tops to wear under suits. And she was sort of an slightly older associate, more senior than me. But it was just this eye-opening moment that I was like, oh, it's not just me and my friends it's like every woman lawyer. And then I went back and remembered that statistic that I had heard when I was in law school, that I was the average student. And I thought, interesting, and it was just sort of like, why does it have to be so hard? Why are we like reinventing the wheel every time someone graduates from law school and then starts working? And I started the blog in May 2008. So we're coming up on 10 years next year. Can't believe it. And at the same time, it was the beginning of summer associate season. So one of the first I think in the first 3 weeks, there was a post I wrote on, inspired by going out to lunch with summer associates and just thinking about all of the business etiquette, like dinner etiquette tips that I'd had to learn that I had not known, like which one is your like BMW, which one is your bread middle plate or bread middle water. That's what it is, BMW. So that you remember which bread plate is yours, which water is yours, and all that good stuff. And so I wrote a post, 10 things to know about business lunches, and it got picked up by Above the Law, week 3. And it started to grow from there. And I was anonymous at the time. And I remember like going out on my lunch break and calling my father and be like, Above the Law picked me up. I can't believe it. And he was like, well, what did they say? Like, what did they link to? And I said, they just linked to Corporette. Like it was like a source, like it was a thing. And I still remember that phone call. And then I got super lucky with, there was some panel, Seventh Circuit had a panel, some boring CLE panel or something. And the judges who were sitting on the panel got into this. It was, I think like in some ABA event, and they got into total off-topic discussion about how poorly lawyers were dressed before them when they came to argue cases. And there was a journalist in the audience, and she said, well, how should people learn to dress for appearing in court? And one of the female judges, I think Judge Lefkow, said, you should check out Corporette.
Oh my God.
Because these judges had been sort of basically trashing local counsel and the other lawyers who were appearing before them, that story got picked up, as did you should check out Corporette. And it was on like the front page of the New York Times online, that story with a link to it. And it was like, my traffic shot up, my web server shut me down. I was still anonymous. So the request from the New York Times for comment went to my spam filter. And this happened a week before I was set to be married. So if you remember the week before your wedding, you're like already like vibrating from stress and all of the things that need to be done and so forth. And so anyway, it was really, really lucky, and things worked out from there, even though there were some bumps along the way. And so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that story really speaks to the point that if you just kind of put out what you want to put out, you couldn't have planned this even if you had tried. You know what I mean?
I could not have planned this. No. Yeah. Well, and I mean, it was interesting because I was trying to run like AdWords or whatever back in the day.
Yeah.
I think this was before Facebook ads were a thing. And I couldn't even think about what words to you're supposed to target specific words. And I was like, professional wear, like workwear for women. Because that was bringing up lots of like links to like Dickies pants, like worker workwear, like work.
Like construction
workwear. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, oh, that's, or like nurses wear was coming up. And I was like, I don't even know so it was just total dumb luck. And I actually heard from a reader who had been a clerk to Judge Lefkow, who said, I'm the one who gave her your link. And so if I've never thanked her on a podcast, thank you. And then I was anonymous and had at that point, this was probably 2010. I switched over from Cahill to the Media Law Resource Center, and I was working, it's a nonprofit group, sort of a membership group for the media defense bar. And so like the New York Times general counsel was the president of it and stuff like that. And so I was working for the MLRC, and they knew about the blog when I hired. Very interesting sitting in the interview, talking with the general counsel of the New York Times about pantyhose advice, because he had looked at the blog and that was like, what was up? But they were okay with me outing myself to come out. And I had gotten an opportunity to go do like this mall tour thing with InStyle and Anne Klein. So that was how I sort of started to introduce myself to readers and started putting my name on the blog and so forth. And then it was about a year later, 2011 or so, that I decided I really wanted to focus on the blog. I found a lot of opportunities, a lot of like possibilities for growth, and I really wanted to see how far I could take it. And I decided to quit my job. And the morning of, found out I was pregnant. And so I needed to sort of make sure before I quit my job that pregnancy would be covered if I switched to my husband's plan and all that other stuff. So it worked out well, but it was, again, sort of one of those things where you can't plan this stuff. So
that's amazing. Had you monetized the blog before you left?
I had, yeah. And that was also a big And it was funny because, again, I'm a total dork. It comes back to me being a dork, copyright stuff and intellectual property rights and stuff. Because I was the first year of the blog, when I'd started it, I thought this is going to be great for ads. I'll totally have, Ann Taylor write advertising on the blog. Who wouldn't want to? And that was my main plan for monetization. And probably in the first month or two of the blog, I was trying to grab an image from drugstore.com that existed. We were doing my post on like how to look great the day after the all-nighter. And which is, I always thought one of our pillar posts in the beginning, because you just don't see people writing that for like in style, it's only lawyers who are up all night.
And your titles are so clickable for your audience, before before that was even a thing, you were doing it.
Thank you. But so I was trying to grab an image, and I was like, well, what are the rights around images and, the fair use law? So I was clicking around through the terms and conditions of drugstore.com, and they said, oh, if you want to be an affiliate, click here. And I was like, well, what's an affiliate? I've never heard of that. And it turns out to be probably 60% of the way we've monetized the blog since that. It's basically online content marketing. If I mention a sweater at Nordstrom and people click through me to buy the sweater or buy anything else at Nordstrom, I get a cut of their sales, basically. So drugstore.com was my first affiliate relationship. And with affiliates, you could grab images on the back end. And so I was like, so it's totally okay because I'm an affiliate. But I now have affiliate relationships with pretty much every retailer out there. So
yeah, affiliate links are a great way to monetize. And I actually learned about them from who I think is the queen of affiliate links. I don't know if you know her, Michelle.
Maddock?
No, Schroeder. She runs Making Sense of Sense. It's a money blog, but she makes like 6 figures a month on affiliate links through her blog.
I'm going to have to look her up.
Yeah, I'll send you a link after. She's phenomenal. And she's just...
Does she do income reports?
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
So you should definitely check that out because I think she does really good work and quality links. It's not kind of just a mash of a lot of things to get traffic.
Totally. Yeah. No, well, that's the key. You know what I mean? I recently revised my affiliate, disclosures on the blog, and I'm totally fine with laying it out there because I think I've always tried to do it in a moral and editorial way.
Yep.
I'm not going to link to something, even if they're offering me 25% commission or something on it, because I'm like, oh, hey, you guys, check out this boat shoe. No one cares. Like if we're doing a story on like, what to wear when your law firm makes you go yachting in the summer or something, then maybe we'll talk about it. But I'm not going to be like, all right, guys, check it out. So, I've always been fine with putting it all out there for people to see, but not to the extent that I'll do income reports, but still.
Fair enough. And so how long have you been full-time at the blog now?
I've been full-time since mid-2011, like May 2011.
And what does life look like for you full-time these days?
It's certainly different than it was before. I mean, a lot of the day is spent now on social media, finding things for social media. It used to be, I was just joking with someone about this yesterday, that it used to be that I kind of felt like I could breathe and have some space to work on big picture ideas after the final blog post went up at 3:00. But now when 3:00 hits, I feel like it's just time to start promoting the blog posts of the day on social media. And then it's like another hour and a half is spent writing, 4 different tweets to go out over the next month and like things like that. And they all have to have different image sizes now. And it's an interesting aspect that is not something that I think we really envisioned back in J school in the 90s,
I mean, how could you have? Like, it's unbelievable how quickly things have changed.
It really is. Absolutely. Yeah. And so I spend a lot of, I try to have a principled schedule of like, working on long tail stuff, refreshing older posts that I can sort of, trot around on social media that I think are still good. How to look great the day after the all-nighter or something. It's, it's not a post that I want to write again for my audience. Although actually I think we maybe did refresh it. Slightly different tack, like makeup to make you look great. But it's still a good post, like, and there's not, to me, a lot of these are evergreen posts that just need, a few links refreshed and maybe some better graphics. And then I can, so a lot of time is actually spent fixing things in the archives.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of time is spent sort of finding articles on social media. I joke with my husband every time I open up a new tab, I lose like 15 minutes of my life. And I feel like I have like 400 tabs open at any given point. Your typical woman mom, I'm very, very much one of those people who the Pinterest joke of, my brain has too many tabs open 100% applies to me. And then just sort of, trying to make sure that no one's throwing tomatoes in the comment sections, and that writing the post, researching the post, doing some social media for the post. Corporette, we do 24 posts a week now, I guess, because we just added another post to Corporette Moms.
That's insane amount of content.
And it's largely me or my editor, Kate. We've got a few freelancers we work with, but for the most part, it's all me, in part because I can find freelancers and I can find former lawyers, but the difficulty of finding, fashionable lawyers who are also freelancing for a reasonable rate, who want to write for Corporette, that unicorn I have yet to exactly find. And so just, I haven't wanted to hire someone who's like, oh, I'm the fashion person. You guys, let's wear cropped, flare pants to work. Super cute, strapless, totally in. Which bustier to wear under your suit blazer. I don't want to have like the lawyer who's going to be like, oh, hey guys, Talbots for the, not that there's anything wrong with Talbots, but just totally go on the more
conservative, traditional.
Conservative, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can imagine that that's really hard to find, but you guys have done such a fantastic job. I mean, your content is always new. I think your readers, so that's one of the things I absolutely love about your blog, is that you continue to get such huge amounts of engagement. And that's one of the things that I don't love about a podcast, is that I don't get to engage with my listeners.
Right.
And when I do, it's like they email me and I love those emails, but it's hard to kind of get a conversation going. What do you think it is about your content specifically? Because I know that not all blogs are doing as well as they used to.
I think that's very true. And I think especially for fashion blogs, Instagram has totally like, it's just so easy to scroll through it. Although I don't like their algorithm. I feel like I'm not seeing half of the things I want to see. But I think that for Corporette and Corporette Moms, the anonymity is a big part of it. And I was just thinking about this recently because we answered some reader email and people were like, the commenters were like, this is such a stupid question. Why are you wasting our time with this stupid question? And my attitude was, this is why the blog exists. Like, who else is she going to ask this stupid question to? Like when I was a summer associate, I got invited to go to an oral argument and just sit in the galleys. And it was like a prior restraint case with Floyd. I really wanted to impress him. I was trying to be, smart and substantial and intelligent. And those were the things I wanted to be thought of at the firm. And I didn't want to have to ask, but I did. Do I have to wear pantyhose? Because that sounds immediately like you're an idiot. It immediately sounds like you don't care.
Completely.
And it's like, it's either whatever the answer is, you're screwed. Because if the answer is, yeah, you have to wear pantyhose, why are you whining? You look like a little petulant child, pull up your big girl pantyhose and go to work. And if the answer is, no, why would you have to wear pantyhose? It's 2017, we're all grown-ups here. You still look like a petulant child who's like worried about propriety and, clutching your pearls and things like that. And I had to call my, at the time, the only person I could ask I called the senior associate on the case, who was a woman. And I was like, hi, I just had a question. Do I have to wear, a skirt suit and a pantyhose to oral arguments? And she was like, yeah, you do. But I always felt like she kind of looked at me, like, oh, I was a lightweight. That's the problem. You come out of law school, you don't want to be a lightweight. You don't want it to matter, but you just want to do the right thing and not have to ask anyone. And you don't necessarily know what the right thing is.
There's also just so many other things you need to be learning. Like your brain is so full of all this other information that sometimes the decision fatigue kicks in and you don't want to spend it on your fashion choice. Not because you don't care,
right?
But because it feels like it has the smallest return on investment of your time.
Absolutely. No. Yeah. And there's so many women where it's like the fun stuff to buy is like workout clothes or like going out clothes or date night clothes. You know, like you don't want to be like, oh, okay, I've got to let's find more pencil skirts. You know, like you just want to buy it and be done with it. And so I think that's also been sort of like a good thing, or sort of the genesis of the blog of just, you know, here's something for your consideration. If you like it, great. If you don't worry about it, you know?
So one of the things I noticed is that when I started, and I think this is generally true, that the junior associates tend to dress the most formally. And I think that that's right. They should, until they're more aware of what the culture is at their own firm and what's appropriate. But I'm not sure how much of it is a changing in the times or kind of just my own maturing into my own style. What are you seeing as far as the changes in the corporate world for young professional women?
I mean, I think that trends have been moving so fast. You know, I mean, it used to be, I would tell people if it didn't exist 5 years ago, don't wear it. You know, like when peep-toe boots came out, you know, I and the readers were all like, pigs are flying. Do not wear this to the office. What is this even, like, why does it even exist? It's so stupid. And now it's like, all right, sure, wear them. Like, if you can wear peep-toes at your office, you could probably wear peep-toe booties, and it's not a big deal, you know? And the trends are just coming so quickly now that I think it's harder to keep up, you know? And I think that, again, you know, someone who is new in the law firm is always going to be well advised to stick to the classic shapes, you know, the pencil skirt, the classic pump, you know.
Completely agree.
You know, and like the blouse, like that's where you're, you know, don't wear track pants to the office until I had a conversation with a law firm partner, a New York partner, and she was like, she was joking about some of the summer associates, and she's like, I don't care if they're theory track pants, don't wear them to the office. It's just, I mean, I think it's more, and as always, it's women who are more at risk.
Because it's a much higher burden that we bear.
It's a much higher spectrum of what you can and cannot wear to work. And for guys, it's like flat front or pleated pants, you know, like it's not, they're not wearing hammer pants to work, you know, like
it completely. And also I think that a lot of women have a lot of their sense of self in what they wear. And for some of us who, like, I never imagined myself at Big Law, and I wanted to regain a sense of myself through my fashion.
Yeah. You feel like you're losing your soul a little bit when you're working in Big Law, and the long hours and the demands on your energy and time and brain space, that you want to rebel a little bit and feel like you want to reconnect in some way with yourself.
And to be able to look in the mirror and like recognize like this person. And the first thing you see is what you're wearing, you know? And it can feel like when you open your closet and nothing is something you would have worn in a previous life, like you've come too far away from who you are.
No. Well, I think people think I'm insane because I always talk about how I wore, one of my big things was silly socks. I would wear with my plain suit, you know, and like high-heeled boots, I would keep like crazy, you know, like martini socks or, you know, flying toaster socks or things like that. Like it was my little way of staying connected with the silly person I had been before law school.
We didn't actually talk about this, but I would love for you if you could share the story about how you started writing. I think it was a comedy that you did to get back into writing.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I definitely felt like I was losing my soul and just losing touch with who I was and who I wanted to be. You know, that was the other thing. You come out of law school and you've been on this path for so long of like, okay, got to do well in school, and this is going to look great on my resume, and I got to do, you know, to get everything you do to get to Big Law. You're like, all right, and then you get to Big Law and you're like, 9 years of this before I'm even considered for partner. What? And then you start wondering, is partner even the goal? What do I want to do with my life after this? At a certain point, I decided I needed to sort of reconnect with myself. And so I had always loved humor writing. and I'd actually, when I was younger, wanted to go to Harvard so I could write for the Lampoon. And I wound up, it was sort of funny because when I was in college, I was sort of like, my career will be chosen by which school I get into. And I was like, if I go to Northwestern, I'll be a journalist. If I go to Johns Hopkins, they had a great creative writing program, I'll probably try to be a writer. If I go to Harvard, I'll probably try to be a comedy writer. I hadn't done comedy writing in a long time. And I took a class at Gotham, which is just sort of like a local, they offer a lot of different sort of classes for extracurricular fun in New York. And I took a humor writing class, and I'm still good friends with a lot of people from that class. And, I don't know if it was great stuff. Like, I don't know if it was hilarious to anyone but myself, but I found it very therapeutic. And it just sort of reminded me that I had something to offer the world other than doc review or, like some huge spreadsheet of how much the client was owed by party A, or, like all of these sort of crazy things that one does in law. And in the writing class, it was very much receiving and giving constructive criticism and trying to figure out how to twist and tweak things so that they could be smarter and funnier. And it was just a different part of my brain that I hadn't used in a long time. And I loved that.
It's something we talk about a lot on the show, about kind of making space to do the things you used to love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they aren't going to benefit anyone but yourself. I think
that's the key.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's like, I hadn't done that for so long.
Mm-hmm.
I actually took a calligraphy class. I've always loved fonts and handwriting. And I used to take Chinese, and I used to just sit and like draw the characters in perfect little characters and these perfect little squares on my graph paper when I was younger.
That's so cool.
And I never really saw a use for it, so I didn't pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was my mistake, was thinking it had to be useful other than to make me happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I find it so therapeutic now to have to do. And, a couple times a year, I get to write really nice, fancy cards for people for the holidays. But the rest of the time, it's just for me, and it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I mean, I think that connection, especially to something you loved as a child, is always a good place to start if you're looking to reconnect with yourself. A friend of mine, when I'd been a writer, or when I was doing a lot of creative writing and in different groups, a friend of mine had advised me for like a character, when in doubt, strip to the skeleton and build from there. And I've always thought about that advice. And I think that was sort of where I was going with the comedy writing class. And I think it's just good advice for people as well as characters.
That's phenomenal advice. And I'm going to write that one down because I think I'm going to come back to that one. That's really good.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the time and realizing we need to wrap up. So I would love if you could quickly just let us know what's coming down the pipeline for Corporette and Corporette Moms so people can head over there and check you guys out.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm going to try to get out a career planner soon. It occurred to me when I came out of law school, some of my girlfriends from law school, we were sharing different career goals and things like that. And one of my friends she's senior to me by like 8 or 9 years. And she sent me this like spreadsheet of, okay, if I want to be a judge, this is who I need to know. And I need to know him I can get to him by going through him. And this is what my resume needs to look like if I want to be a judge. And if I want to be a chief counsel of a law, like she had it all broken down. And I had never seen anything like that before or frankly since. And I used it and I sort of had, okay, if I want to go in-house at a media company, this is who I need to know. If I want to, be an academic, this is who I need to know, things like that. And I'm sort of trying to work out a way of making that like a workbook for readers to think about how they're going to plan their career, just because I think it would be an interesting exercise for a lot of women.
What a phenomenal resource. What a good idea. I talk about those concepts with people, but I think that it's too abstract, and to have it in a workbook, I would reference people to it all the time.
Oh, thank you. I know. I think it would be cool. I haven't seen it. And of course, yeah. So I just need to finish it up. I sort of I sequestered myself for like a 2-day writing retreat in December and got pretty far, but I haven't finished it and I need to. And now it's May.
Yep, it'll take as long as it takes, but we will definitely keep an eye out for it. And I will, once it comes out, be sure to let people know.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much.
And the last question I have for you before I let you go is, what do you think is the difference between those lawyers who find happiness in life with a law degree from those lawyers who continue to struggle?
It's such a great question. And honestly, I wish I had the answer. I was one of those people who loved law school and hated the law. And I was doing cool stuff. Like I kept thinking if I could just get on the cool cases, it would all be better. And it just wasn't. It was all, to me, it was not great. And so I don't know what the difference is. I seem to notice people have a more adversarial sort of like the kids who love debate, I think tend to love the practice of law, at least for litigators. Whereas I was never a debater.
No, I could see that. And I'm in transactional practice and I could have never been a litigator because I don't have that kind of adversarial, combative personality. And even for me, I struggle with the more adversarial sides of transactional work. Mm-hmm. It creates a lot of stress for me. I don't struggle technically. I just struggle as far as enjoyment.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think to me, I always felt like I could see all of the grays. I was always in awe of people I worked with who could set their sights to only see black or white.
Correct.
And not see the grays. And that's really where you have to operate if you're going to be a good litigator, And I mean, I think that I also thought I was working with a lot of guys who would write these briefs that just seemed very reminiscent of the angry young man genre of like Kingsley Amis kind of writing. It's just like, okay, like it was just hard for me to really get in and feel like I was a great legal writer or anything like that for briefs and memos. I was fine for memos. I could always lay out the issues. I just didn't really feel like I was a great brief writer.
That's fair. And I think part of that is finding a career path that's in alignment with your personality and your values. Mm-hmm. And when you're forced to kind of conform to this other personality for 60 hours a week, it's exhausting. And it's hard to be happy when you're exhausted.
Absolutely. That's such a good point.
Thank you so much for coming on. I've been such a huge fan of yours for forever. And so this has been a huge deal for me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you so much. That makes me very happy.
Thank you for joining me for the Happy Lawyer Project podcast. Please head over to my website, www.thehappylawyerproject.com, for more information from today's show. While you're there, I'd love it if you leave me your thoughts on the show. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or follow me on Instagram. If you've enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to head over to iTunes to subscribe and review the show. As you know, each rating helps more listeners find the show and helps me get awesome guests on here for you guys. If there's anyone you'd like me to have on the show, or if you'd like to be on the show, head over to my website and let me know, or send me an email at okema, OKEOMA, @thehappylawyerproject.com. A special thanks to everyone who's left a review, sent me an email, or reached out to me in any way. I appreciate you. Thank you again for spending this time with me, and if you would like to learn more about working in your gift and living your passion, head over to the website for a free gift. Until next time, bye!